right, quick video. I am John Beckman, Professor John Beckman, Dr. John Beckman, the father of sin, transgenic mother of sin, your hostess with the mostest. Ooh, that's hot. All right, I got questions about scientific illustration, kind of a random email. I'm just going to use these questions to make a video. Maybe it'll be useful. Usually if somebody asks me a question, there's more other people wondering about that same question. So these are questions pertaining to scientific illustration and a potential career in scientific illustration. Question 1, what do you wish you knew starting out? I wish I would have known starting out that one of the most powerful, persuasive tools are visual images. It took me about 5 to 6 years into my scientific career before I started realizing how important the visual imagery in scientific papers, reviews, etc. was. So I would say visual images are one of the most powerful persuasive tools, and I wish I would have known that immediately. What does nobody tell you, but you know now just from experience? Probably ditto, that visual images are so persuasive. Nobody actually understands that. But when you start incorporating real masterful visual images into your work, you'll start to get real good feedback and response. Also, nobody tells you that online are infinite resources for you to learn. Nowadays, we live in a completely different world where you can learn anything you want to learn online. So you don't need a degree to do scientific illustration. You just need to start practicing online. Advice for me, I'd say scientific illustration is more like a side hustle. Unless you have no dependents. If you have no dependents, then possibly it could be like a real full-time gig. But if you have dependents or plan on having dependents, I would suggest you cultivate this skill as a side hustle. So these are kind of like salary questions, job market questions. I would say I'm not a great person to answer this because, again, scientific illustration for me is like a side hustle. They don't even pay me to teach this class at Auburn. I do this because I think it's fun and it's popular. A lot of people like the class. So I'm literally not paid to teach this class. I do it because I think it's worth it. So this reiterates my view of it is just like more of a side hustle from which I have made zero money. But it's not all about money. It's sometimes about style. Do you know anyone else like you who might be willing to chat with me? If you just Google scientific illustration courses, I know they have one at Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin. I'm sure you'll be able to find other professors who would talk to you. Although I don't know if professors are the best people to talk to. You should look on Instagram and you should find scientific illustrators on Instagram and talk to them. You can contact me in the future if you have questions. How did you break in? The only reason I'm somewhat credible as a scientific illustrator is because I have an entire independent scientific career aside from scientific illustration. So I think the only reason people somewhat take it a little bit seriously is because I'm a scientist with many publications. And whether or not I'm a respected scientist, maybe that's debatable. But I think people, when you look at my accolades, I think you see that there is a little bit of accomplishment there. And so I think that helped me break into the field. So you can't break into the science. My hypothesis is that you can't be a legitimate scientific illustrator if you are only if you are only interested in the artistic aspects of it. I think you really need to be interested in science as well. And so you really need to have a credible scientific background. Otherwise, people aren't really going to take you seriously. They're going to think of you as an artist. The best and worst advice you've ever gotten in your career? That's a really interesting question. I would say my career has been difficult in that I have been trying to straddle both art and science for many years now, almost more than a decade. And it gets you into trouble because those two fields do not understand each other. Artists are they want to create reactions, they want to create emotions, and the success that an artist has is often in direct relation to how controversial they are. Scientists, on the other hand, are exact opposite of that. Scientists do not want controversy. They have very rigorous rule systems. You follow those rules. And I would say that most scientists do not understand liberal arts in the sense of some of the things that a normal artist would do would make scientists feel very uncomfortable. And so straddling the two fields has been very difficult in that as an artist, you have to express yourself. And in many cases, scientists feel that that's unprofessional. And so best and worst advice, both the best and the worst advice was probably when I was younger, when the idea was that you'd go to liberal arts school and you'd get a broad background education and everything. I think that was really good for me. I think that was the best, but also the worst in that I think that my career has suffered because people don't understand that I'm trying to do many different things at the same time. And they want me to sort of fit in this little niche, this little peg, and I feel like I'm a square peg in a round hole, if that makes sense. It's very difficult to straddle those fields. What does it work? This is funny. What's it like working with a client? That's a really interesting question. So when you're working with scientists as a client, they're not going to have any understanding about visual aesthetics and making things look persuasive and good. And many times they're obsessed with, and many times, and this is true for all client sort of graphic design interfaces, the clients are not graphic designers or artists. And so they have no idea what they're talking about. And they might have some vision, and that vision would look horrible if you were actually to implement their vision. So I would say I honestly I don't work with clients. I primarily only work with myself, so that's bad advice. But I would say if your best bet is to understand the research that your client is doing, which is why you need a scientific background. And if you can understand that research, you can help translate that research better for that client. So I try to avoid working with clients, but I suppose you might have to. How did you improve over the years? I'm slowly trying to learn more and more programs. So I'm trying to build my skill set. So I do a lot of GIFs now. I'm very interested in GIFs. And so don't just think of scientific illustration as like learning how to draw. That's the fundamental. But then you should be thinking about how to animate, how to spread your images online, how to build your clientele and your following. That's what's going to make a good scientific illustrator, I think, today. So you need to keep learning new softwares and learning new programs, and they're constantly changing. So I'm always trying to learn the next new thing, stay up to date. What's your favorite part of being a scientific illustrator? I love to draw. And so even though they don't pay me to draw, when I do get to draw as a part of my job, I think that that is a quality of life improver. So I love to draw. Is there anything you hate about it? Yes, I hate the fact that scientists don't understand artists and artists don't understand scientists. And so trying to be a mix of both is going to create real friction. You just have to understand that that's part of the process. Well, I need to invest in certain technology, software. Yeah, you want to learn the Adobe platform, although nowadays there's free stuff that you can download. I would try the free stuff. I have never had to get or use the free stuff because through my university, I have access to Adobe products, which I think are probably the best. But I would invest in a Creative Cloud license, yeah, if it were me. And if I was going to take that seriously, yeah, for sure. You also need a really good computer. I mean, I watch YouTube videos on like what's literally the best computer for Premiere Pro and Photoshop, and I buy those computers. How do you meet people in the industry? How do you network? Going to scientific meetings is probably a really good way. I was just networking a bunch at scientific meeting. So find a scientific meeting on a topic that you're interested in that that you might think that they would embrace and appreciate scientific illustration. Entomology is a good one. So I study insects, and the insect people have for a long time been invested in scientific illustration because it's a part of describing morphology of new species. So it's kind of in their blood. So if you find a field like that, you can get a leg up. Another one that would be good is the softwares that illustrate and animate proteins. That's where I'd start to focus right now, I think. How did you pick this as a career path? Again, so science illustration is really just a side hustle for me. It's not really my career path. It's just something that I love that I do as a hobby, as a side hustle. I've never actually made money off of it, although I have made very important connections through it. So for example, somebody important might want to collaborate with you because you can make somebody might want to collaborate with you based off your ability to illustrate and display data concepts. So I would say it has been a network builder for me, but not necessarily a career path. Do you travel a lot? No, I wish I traveled more. Time off vacation. I'm a scientist and I don't really have time off. For example, it is Thanksgiving break and I'm here on Monday making this video and I have many other things on my task. So I don't really have a lot of time off. For me, I have very passionate projects. And even if it was time off, that would make me feel uncomfortable because I want to be investing my time in those projects. What is a typical what does a typical work week look like? So again, you might be misinterpreting what I do in that most of my work week is emails, writing grants, reading papers, critiquing things, meeting with students. I have a little bit of time in the wet lab, and only a vast, minuscule amount of my work week is scientific illustration. So I'm essentially 98% scientist, 2% scientific illustrator. So I don't know if my work week would be indicative. But on the days when I do scientific illustration, it's cool. It's chill. I just am focused on my task, listening to music, doing my illustration. So I'd imagine if you did build kind of like a chain of clients, which you could online, that you'd have typically a pretty relaxed work week in the sense of it's just you sitting quietly doing these projects. I kind of went over this. How much spare time do you have? That's interesting. I would say I have zero spare time because all my spare time is spent towards projects that I care about. What are the best places to find this type of work? I'd say Instagram. Start in X, start following people who are scientists and start building a network of scientists, and then just start building a website with an online portfolio. That could be a website, that could be an Instagram, that could be both, be a YouTube channel. You want to network with people who are writing grants, because those people who are writing grants are those people who are going to be needing high quality illustrations and images of concepts. And if they're intelligent, those people would probably be willing to contract out that work, because if you're submitting $1 million grant, it's probably worth it to have a $300, $500 figure if it looks good and if it conveys a very important point. Biggest challenges, hardest part of the job. Hardest part of the job for me has been keeping my job, because you piss people off when you're an artist. Beware. What types of people do you work with? Professors. So again, my network of people who actually count on me and rely on me for my scientific illustration are collaborators and professors. So they're people who I do research with, that I have an interest and an inclination to help them in their projects. So I built up essentially these people who I want to work with. And you could probably do that too. Although if you're just starting off, you're probably going to need to take clients that you would not ideally work with. But again, like, I'm not in it for the money. I don't do it for the money. So I'm not desperate to take clients. I'm really only doing passion projects. How do you get promotions and raises? Let me know when you figure that out. Have a good day. Hopefully this is helpful. I didn't want to seem cynical. I think nowadays is a real opportunity for you to build the job that you want to build, and you can build that job all online, and you can interact and meet all the people that you need to meet to be successful online. And you could work from wherever and travel wherever, but you would have to build that. It's not going to be easy to build that. You have to have the skills, the networking ability, and you have to be credible and consistent. Here's one of the biggest problems is artists come into this field, scientific illustration, and they think just because they're good, they think that they'll do well. The problem with artists is many of them are inconsistent. They don't show up for work on time. They are lazy. They are inconsistent. And in many times, they're unintelligent. And so you cannot expect to be a scientific illustrator who's going to collaborate with scientists who are exact opposite of that. They're very consistent. They want you to show up on time. They want you to be consistent. They want to be able to rely on you, and they're extremely intelligent. So they're not going to tolerate sort of the weirdo shit that artists do. So it's a interesting conundrum of straddling the two fields. I would say for scientific illustration, you need to be an artist, but you also need to be professional. And the way that you can be professional is delivering the goods that you are saying you're going to be able to deliver. As long as you do that, I think you'll be in good shape.
Let the gate be open to die. I shall meet death head on. I shall meet death head on. Edgar Cage, you've got to get out of here. Beware foul demons and beasts. There are many foes here. The time has come to cleanse my hoard. This monastery reeks with evil and corruption. Oh, I hate staining my hands with the blood of foul sorcerers. Eternal suffering would be too great for you, Diablo. Let the gate be